Welcome back, Defenders. Jake here. Today's top story has to be Putin's visit to the occupied territories of Ukraine. Putin visited both Crimea and the city of Mariupol for the first time since Russia's full-scale invasion last year. And of course, Hitler did it first. Here's a picture of Hitler in December of 1941 visiting the city of Mariupol to assess the German invasion and occupation of Ukraine. Likewise, here's Putin this week, once again visiting the city of Mariupol to assess the Russian invasion and occupation of Ukraine. So Putin continues to look to the past for inspiration. How can he conquer and control Europe? How can he restore the greatness of the Russian Empire? And we've got some propaganda clips to share with you of this absurd visit to the occupied territories. But let me first share with you the first line of the Kremlin's press release describing Putin's visit. This is what it says. Vladimir Putin arrived in Mariupol by helicopter. He drove a car around several districts, toured the coastline near the yacht club, and visited the theater and other historic sites. As if Mariupol is this booming metropolis, carrying on like any other city in Russia. So here's a clip I want to share with you of a small group of average residents of Mariupol who just happened to be loitering in front of this brand new apartment building at 3 a.m. with a camera crew, hoping that they could bump into the president of Russia and thank him for liberating the city. So let me share a little bit of this with you.
Не ожидал. Можно с вами хотя бы поздороваться? Спасибо очень.
Мы только по телевизору вас сколько раз видели.
Чего так надо же начинать знакомиться поближе.
Только были в Крыму, вам передали по телевизору. Такая работа, да?
А вы здесь живете или?
Да, живем. У меня второй этаж, у них первый этаж.
Нравится?
Спасибо вам.
So I'll link this clip down below if you want to listen for yourself. But there is a moment where there's a woman screaming out of a window in this apartment building, and she yells in Russian, "It's not true, it's all for show." Here's a zoom in of the 6 seconds of the clip. So it's difficult to hear because she's screaming from a distance, but what happened on Russian state TV is one network caught it, that this woman screamed, "It's not true, it's all for show," and they edited it out of the broadcast. But a different Russian network didn't catch this, and they accidentally broadcasted this clip with the woman screaming this in the background. So that's pretty funny. And as for this average group of grateful Mariupol residents excited to see the president of the Russian Federation, yep, just average normal people who always wear earpieces. In addition, a lot of these people look like FSO officers that have appeared in previous propaganda clips. So this guy tends to look a lot like this guy. This guy tends to look a lot like this guy. This woman kind of looks a lot like this woman. So they're paid actors that work for Putin's security services. And I've made the argument on this channel numerous times that this is not the real Putin. The real Putin would not risk his life going to Mariupol when the Ukrainians just bombed it like 2 or 3 weeks ago with some unknown capability. So here is who I argue is the body double. It's up to you if you want to believe this story. But this is the real Putin. So this picture is from last week when he met with Kadyrov in his office. The real Putin has poor posture. He has to grip the table to stop his hands from shaking. His neck is puffy from steroids or various drugs that he's on. And you can also see from his body frame that he's losing weight. He's shrinking as this suit looks very baggy on him now. This is the real Putin when he meets with his Security Council. Nobody gets within 30 meters of this guy. There are no handshakes, there are no hugs, there are no getting close to the dear leader. So who the heck is this guy meeting with strangers on the street of Mariupol? And if you don't believe me, here's Gherkin. He's a former FSB officer. This guy is a wanted international terrorist, but here's him making the argument that, yes, Putin obviously is using body doubles.
Настоящий Путин Владимир Владимирович на Рождество один был в Кремлевском храме, один. Священники боялись к нему лишний раз подойти. Наверное, там снайпер сидел, чтобы предупредил, что отстреляют их, если они приблизятся ближе 20 метров. Вот это настоящий Владимир Владимирович, который, когда показывает, что он принимает министров, он сидит на одном конце стола и рассматривает в бинокль, где там вот сидят вот эти. Вот это настоящий. А тот, который награждает орденами, которые со всеми обнимаются, там их несколько штук, и которые заявления делают. Вот я сразу, когда вижу Путина в толпе, якобы, я сразу понимаю, что речь о двойнике. А что болтает двойник, это никто не знает, что болтает двойник. Пургу несет, наверное, как этот.
So how do you know it's the fake Putin? If he's in a crowd, that's not the real Putin. So here's the real Putin giving the State of the Nation address a couple weeks ago. Here's the Putin in Sevastopol, and here's the Putin in Mariupol. And plastic surgery can do wonders. You can make someone look like another person. But it's kind of hard to change bone structure, and from their chins, these look like different guys. In addition, you can kind of just look at the hairline of this one. It's not the same as the other two. Let me read to you the tweet from Ukraine's Ministry of Defense. As befits a thief, Putin visited Ukrainian Mariupol under the cover of night. First, it's safer because there's a curfew in the city and everyone has to be home in their apartments in the middle of the night. Also, darkness allows him to highlight what he wants the Kremlin to show their people and hide the truth. So one of Putin's body doubles really likes driving. He probably misses it from his old civilian life. So here's a clip of Putin driving around the city of Mariupol. And what sense does this make for a 70-year-old man to be driving an unfamiliar car in an unfamiliar city in the middle of the night just to see what is going on in Mariupol?
С левой стороны сейчас буду проезжать, сделали очень хороший светофор, с левой стороны уже сделали сквер хороший, благоустройство. Запустили движение общественного транспорта. 110 автобусов работают, и, Владимир Ильич, если все получится, к лету хотим запустить первый.
At least when Hitler visited Mariupol, he took pictures and videos during the daytime for his own propagandists to report back to their people the conditions of the city. And if Putin had filmed this propaganda clip during the daytime, this is Mariupol's Miru Avenue. If he had been driving down the city with his cameraman rolling, they would have seen burnt out, destroyed, abandoned buildings that the Russian military destroyed. This city pre-invasion had a population close to 500,000, and the Russian military slaughtered tens of thousands of innocent civilians, indiscriminately bombing and destroying every building in this city. For a comparison in leadership, here's a picture of President Zelensky. President Zelensky visited Bucha within 48 hours of the news of the atrocities breaking. He spoke to ordinary people from the city. He was visibly distraught. Putin made it to Mariupol, or his body double did, 10 months after the Russian military captured the city because they needed time to build shiny, fake new apartment buildings to stage their propaganda clips. He drove around in a car in the middle of the night, did some photo ops, and then immediately left. It's a joke. Let's now follow up on the International Criminal Court's arrest warrants for Putin. It's been 2 or 3 days, and I was assuming that we would get some interesting clips from Kremlin State TV freaking out about this arrest warrant. But the answer is no. The Kremlin is going silent on the ICC's arrest warrant for Putin. So tonight, Russian State TV's flagship program, News of the Week, this is a 3-hour broadcast, and they did not mention the International Criminal Court issuing an arrest warrant for President Putin. What were they talking about instead? Well, dear Vladimir Putin, your instructions to install gas networks in Sevastopol are being fully carried out on time. So everything in Russia is A-OK. What did they do, though? In response to Putin being an international criminal wanted by The Hague, they decided to remove all of the country flags at the Square of Europe in Moscow. So this was a week ago. They still had flags from countries around the world flying, and this is what it looks like today. That hurts Russia. And here's a statement from the German Justice Minister, Marco Buschmann. He says that if Putin would set foot on German soil, they would arrest him immediately. There's probably about 120 or 130 countries around the world where Putin can never go ever again. And this was actually very smart from the International Criminal Court to charge Putin with war crimes concerning the deportation of children. The reason why is this is not something that Russia wants to talk about because it looks pretty bad, but it's also something they can't accuse the Ukrainians of doing as well. In the comments section, I get comments from Russian bots saying, hey, this is war, both sides are doing it. But you can't accuse Ukraine of invading Russia, abducting their children, and deporting them back to Ukraine. Even Russian propagandists can't make that argument that Ukraine is doing that. So there is no defense. So Russian propagandists have decided to go silent on this issue, not talk about it, not mention it, don't address it. This issue of Putin being an international criminal wanted by The Hague, we're just going to pretend like that never happened. So the other big story breaking today is Chinese President Xi visiting Moscow and a show of support for the Russians. This is currently happening. This is a 3-day visit, so in my next update video, I'll have some better clips for you. But China is trying to position itself as this neutral third-party arbiter that can broker a peace between Ukraine and Russia. And sorry, China, no. You've been conducting military exercises in cooperation with the Russians for the last 17 years straight. So you're not a neutral third party that can broker a peace. What country is at this point? I don't think there is one. But China is still going to play this PR game to say that they can get something done. If President Xi wants to visit President Zelensky in Kyiv, I'm sure the Ukrainians would welcome him with open arms to engage in productive dialogue and conversations. And here's a funny moment. When President Xi got off the plane in Moscow, Putin didn't greet him. It's customary for the president to welcome an incoming president on the tarmac at the airport, but Putin doesn't go outside and doesn't allow him to be surrounded by crowds. So instead, Putin sent the Deputy Prime Minister of Tourism, Sport, Culture, and Communication to welcome the President of China. I mean, diplomatically, this is kind of an insult. When you think about the size, power, and prestige of China, at the airport, he's being welcomed by the Deputy Minister for Tourism. Here's a clip from the Kremlin this morning of President Xi interacting with the real Putin, and let's watch this together.
Вы также в курсе, что мы всегда открыты для переговорного процесса.
对谈判进程 一直敞开这个大门。
Обсудим, безусловно, все эти вопросы, в том числе и ваши инициативы.
所以说，我们将来有机会详细的讨论这些问题。
К которым мы относимся, безусловно, с уважением.
So this is the real Putin. The real Putin smacks his lips when he's nervous. The real Putin has a puffy neck from the steroids or whatever he takes. The real Putin is fidgeting his hands on the armrests of the chair because he can't control their movements. The real Putin is also just getting very thin. Look how skinny his legs look sitting in this chair with his poor posture. I'm sure President Xi wanted to go to Moscow himself to look at this guy face to face, look at him in the eyes, and make a decision. Do I risk my own economy? Do I risk my own power and prestige and standing in the world by giving him deadly weapons, offensive weapons to carry on this losing war in Ukraine? I'm glad I'm not the only one that saw this parallel, but the joke in China is that President Xi looks like Winnie the Pooh, and if these two are a pair, then that would make President Putin Piglet. Looking forward to any pictures of Piglet being banned in Russia. But what is China really up to? And China's Ministry of Natural Resources has issued a new regulation on map creation. They're requiring the use of old Chinese names of cities that were conquered by the Russians in the 1800s. So in Chinese history, there's this period called the Century of Humiliation, in which Western powers stole their land. And China has been able to reclaim all their territory, all their old land from the British, the Germans, the French, the Japanese, but they haven't reclaimed Outer Manchuria from the Russians. And now they're advising their map makers to not use Russian names like Vladivostok, and instead call the city Haitian Wei, which was the Chinese name before the Russians stole this land from the Chinese. So all this talk from Putin about restoring historical borders, I think the irony on him is lost that China is listening to his words and saying, maybe that's a good idea. Let's check in with the defenders on the front lines, and the city of Bakhmut continues to hold. I don't have any recent clips from the last 2 days of defenders in the area talking about the situation. I imagine they're a little preoccupied with what's going on. But we do have a recent video of mobilized Russian men complaining about their conditions. As always, I'll put this in a pinned comment down below if you want to check it out for yourself. But let me read for you what they're saying in this clip. Upon arriving to the DPR, we were attached to the 200th Brigade to conduct assault objectives. Our unit took very significant losses. We were sent to assault a strong point at Avdiivka without reconnaissance, without artillery preparation and support. As a result, losses in the unit were up to 70% of our personnel. So these are the remaining forces after they were forced to participate in one of these meat wave attacks where the Russian military doesn't care how many of them come back. And we finally got a comment from Russian state TV talking about these viral clips of their soldiers complaining. So I forget this guy's name, but he's interviewing another guy, asking him, what's your opinion on these Russian soldiers complaining in these viral videos? What do you think we should do with them?
Как вы думаете, вот что с этим делать? И насколько это деморализующее воздействие, в принципе, оказывает на части российской армии?
Я, может быть, жестко скажу, но это называется паникер. И в военное время, Великую Отечественную войну, были бы расстреляны на месте. Я вообще не понимаю, какой смысл говорить о том, что нас призвали, мы должны сидеть во втором.
So he's saying if this was World War II, we just would have executed them. He's probably making the argument on Kremlin state TV to let viewers know, if you mutiny, if you continue filming these videos complaining about your treatment, we're probably just going to start executing you guys. Lovely. Here's some bad news for Russia. According to Ukrainian estimates, the remaining number of Russia's long-range missile stockpile has dwindled greatly. Of their X-101 and KH-55s, when the invasion started, their stockpile was about 810. They're down to 47. Same thing with the Caliber missiles. They started with 725. They're down to 58. These hypersonic Kinzhals, they only got 50. They don't have that many of them to begin with, but these were Russia's best capability missiles, and they wasted them over the last 4 or 5 months, blowing up Ukraine's energy grid, which more or less has all been restored. So these were missiles not used on valid military targets to stop the Ukrainian military. Now, yes, they can still probably produce single-digit numbers worth of these missiles every month, but it's going to take decades to replenish their stockpiles if they can somehow make it out of this war. More bad news for Russia. Russia's ruble has crashed 20% since the beginning of this year as Ukraine war costs pile up and energy revenue continues to sink. So Russia's currency is trading at 75 rubles per US dollar, the lowest it's been in the last 10 months. And this was a huge feather in the cap of Russian propagandists, pointing to their currency as it actually strengthened for the first 4 months of this war. So prior to the invasion, the ruble was about 77 rubles per US dollar. It devalued greatly in those first 2 weeks as Russian banks were being kicked out of the SWIFT network. It then continued to strengthen through the summertime. The two biggest contributing factors: one, Russia's central bank had foreign currencies in reserve of euros and dollars, and they just bought their own currency to manipulate it. The second one is that the price of oil and natural gas was really high, and Russia was requiring customers to exchange their currency for rubles first before purchasing oil. But the oil price cap that went into effect in December, I think this is the biggest contributing factor. In addition, Russia is almost out of their foreign currency reserves, so they can no longer just buy their own currency to stabilize it. So we've seen it over the last 3 months devalue by greater than 20%. So currently it's trading at 76 rubles per US dollar. This is a new trend. It's only going to get worse for Russia's economy and their currency going forward into this year. Here's a piece of good news for Ukraine, as the results of a U.S. assessment show Ukrainian pilots can learn to fly F-16s in less than 6 months. So this was a headline 2 weeks ago that 2 Ukrainian pilots were sent to the United States so that American trainers could assess their skills and develop a training program for them. So more than likely, a couple dozen Ukrainian pilots are going to be coming to probably Wright Pat Air Force Base in Ohio to start training on F-16s. Even if F-16s are never given to Ukraine, and I think they will, it's still valuable to start training them on Western aircraft so that when this war is over and Ukraine becomes part of NATO, these pilots are already trained to defend their skies with Western aircraft. Final couple feel-good clips I have for you. The first one is of the 93rd Brigade in Bakhmut, and they're about to shoot down a Wagner-operated Russian jet using this man-portable system. The entire clip is 5.5 minutes. I can't show the plane being shot down because I can't do that with YouTube, but I want to share with you their reaction. The reaction of these soldiers after they successfully shot down this Russian aircraft being operated by the Wagner Group.
С победой, мой любимый.
Так,
Я думаю, загонял, загонял.
Так а что? Подожди, а их
В 24-м вообще два пілоти. Один іде як стрілок.
После выхода
24 може вертикально літати, бачити, я один. А один іде просто
что-то
як,
буду поверх, и потом
пулемет якась, коротше,
да, сбил,
Да, пацани говорять,
А він человека не
а я хотел утром.
Я дивлюсь, він отак, ракета отак. Хто зна куди пішло, я вже
жінка даже написала,
Не, красиво, я дивився.
написала, що
You can just feel the excitement from these defenders in Bakhmut, knowing that they got that Wagner aircraft. Final clip I have for you comes from the very heart of London. A street artist painted a mural to the Ukrainian prisoner of war who was murdered by the Russians after saying "Glory to Ukraine." That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up, best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next update video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.